Welcome to the absolute twilight zone of the late Cretaceous Mongolia, an evolutionary testing ground where nature completely abandoned its standard blueprint for dinosaur design and created something so bizarre. It spent nearly half a century breaking the minds of the world's leading paleontologists. 90 million years ago, the Nemegt Formation was a rich, humid ecosystem packed with giant predatory tarbosaurids, massive titanosaurian sauropods, and rapid dromaeosaurids. In this hyper-violent theatre of titans, you usually survived by doing one of two things: growing into a massive bone-crushing carnivore or building a multi-ton armor fortress. But one creature decided to rewrite the evolutionary source code completely. Enter Therizinosaurus cheloniformis, the Cossack Scythe, the organic Edward Scissorhands, and the ultimate paradoxical nightmare of the prehistoric world. For generations, if you asked a casual observer what a giant bipedal theropod looked like, they would picture a meat-eating monster with sharp teeth and tiny arms. Therizinosaurus took that expectation and systematically pulverized it. This was a 5-ton, 10-meter-long titan that possessed the evolutionary lineage of a fierce predator, the digestive system of a specialized vegetarian, and a pair of hypermuscular arms equipped with the most terrifying, meter-long keratin broadswords to ever exist in terrestrial history. When Soviet paleontologist Evgeny Maleev first uncovered the fossilized remains of these massive claws in 1948, the scientific database suffered a severe system crash. The bones were so massive, flat, and curved that Maleev officially classified the animal as a giant, 3-meter-long marine turtle that used its ribs to harvest underwater vegetation. It took decades of subsequent excavations and the discovery of closely related species in the Mongolian desert to reveal the chilling truth: these weren't turtle ribs. They were the single fingers of a colossal, bipedal feathered phantom that turned the mathematics of leverage and sharpness into its ultimate ecological monopoly. If you are thoroughly captivated by this raw, forensic, and deeply unhinged unmasking of the ancient world's most extreme design anomalies and anatomical scandals, ensure you are subscribed to the channel and have liked this video. Your continuous support is the exact high-octane fuel that allows our digital reconstruction unit to resurrect these bizarre empires with absolute scientific precision. To understand the architectural genius of the Cossack Scythe, we must execute a severe structural audit on the features that Hollywood and modern video games completely misrepresent. In pop culture, Therizinosaurus is depicted as a hyper-aggressive slasher that sprints across the plains, slicing up smaller dinosaurs like a frantic samurai. But modern biomechanical stress tests, finite element analysis, and bone histology have deleted that cinematic fantasy from the server. Therizinosaurus was not a fast runner. Its hind limbs were short, stocky, and built with unique, foot-toed feet where every digit touched the ground to distribute its immense 5-ton weight. This was a low-speed, high-stability platformer living tripod designed to move deliberately through the dense, swampy forest canopies. The true business end of this organic machine lay in its colossal pectoral girdle and arms, which could reach a total span of over 2.5 meters. The shoulder architecture featured exceptionally deep cavities that anchored massive muscle complexes, providing an incredible amount of pulling and drawing power. But the true evolutionary masterpieces were the 3 iconic claws sitting on each hand. Measuring up to 1 meter along the outer curve, these flat, gently curved sides were composed of a dense bone core wrapped in a hyperthick, self-sharpening sleeve of beta-keratin. This wasn't a rounded puncture weapon like the claw of a T-Rex or an Allosaurus. The Cossack Scythe was a lateral blade, possessing a sharp ventral edge that could slice through soft tissue and plant fibers with minimal resistance. Yet, when computer models subjected these claws to high-impact mechanical stress simulation testing, what would happen if a Therizinosaurus tried to strike a hard object head-on? The digital bones threatened to fracture near the base. The engineering conclusion was clear: these claws were not built for industrial bone crushing or violent, high-speed chopping. They were highly specialized, multifunctional precision tools. Therizinosaurus used its massive arm reach to hook high, out-of-reach branches of ancient ginkgos and conifers, dragging the high nutrient vegetation down to its small, toothless beak exactly like a modern giant ground sloth. The claws were an extension of its feeding apparatus, a biological crane system that allowed a 5-ton animal to harvest calories from zones that no other herbivore in the Nemegt Formation could reach, turning a specialized theropod into the ultimate monopoly holder of the Cretaceous high canopy buffet. The tactical paradox of Therizinosaurus cheloniformis intensifies when we shift our forensic focus from its high canopy harvesting methods to the raw mathematics of battlefield survival in the Nemegt Formation. While computer stress models prove that these 1-meter keratin blades could not endure the high-impact stress of hacking into solid bone, they were perfectly calibrated to act as the ultimate psychological and physical deterrent against the apex predators of its environment. The primary threat to a mature Therizinosaurus was Tarbosaurus spotter, a 5-ton relative of Tyrannosaurus rex equipped with massive, bone-crushing jaws. In a traditional dinosaur matchup, a large herbivore was expected to run or use heavy tail armor. But the Cossack Scythe stood its ground, turning its 2.5-meter arm reach into a deadly zone of defensive containment. When confronted by a theropod, Therizinosaurus would rear up on its short, stocky hind limbs, utilizing its unique 4-toed feet to anchor its entire 5-ton mass into the Cretaceous mud. This posture elevated its chest and head, allowing it to bring its massive arms into a forward-facing combat display. It didn't need to break the Tarbosaurus's skull, it simply had to slash. The razor-sharp ventral edges of the beta-keratin sheaths could slice through skin, neck muscles, and deep facial arteries with a single fluid lateral swipe. A carnivore that risked entering this defensive radius faced catastrophic blood loss and blindness before it could ever close the distance to deploy its crushing jaws. This was a strategy of absolute compliance reduction, a biological defense line where the sharpness of the weapon and the immense pulling power of the shoulder muscles created an unyielding barrier, forcing the largest predators of the ancient world to abandon the hunt and seek less dangerous targets. If you are thoroughly mesmerized by this precise, forensic deconstruction of the ancient world's heaviest weapons and survival thresholds, ensure you are subscribed to the channel and have liked this video. Your continuous engagement is the exact mechanical foundation that allows our digital paleontology unit to keep reconstructing these lost empires. Behind this wall of sharp armor sat an internal processing facility that was equally revolutionary in its engineering. To fuel a 5-ton frame entirely on low-calorie, fibrous vegetation, Therizinosaurus had to abandon the sleek, aerodynamic body shape of its theropod ancestors. It evolved a massive, wide, and heavily expanded pelvic girdle that held a colossal, barrel-shaped abdominal cavity. This wasn't fat, it was a massive biothermal fermentation vat. Within this giant gut, metric tons of plant matter were slowly broken down over days by specialized symbiotic bacteria, utilizing natural heat and chemical decomposition to extract every available scrap of nutrient from the tough Cretaceous flora. To accommodate this massive digestive system, the animal's weight shifted heavily toward the rear, requiring the stocky, short hind legs and broad foot pads to maintain balance while walking or sitting on its hocks like a giant, feathered bear. The final piece of this evolutionary puzzle was discovered in the Gobi Desert, where paleontologists uncovered extensive colonial nesting sites that completely updated our software on dinosaur reproductive behavior. Therizinosaurus didn't just dump its eggs and walk away. They nested in massive groups, constructing large mud mounds filled with beautifully organized, textured spherical eggs. The forensics of these sites indicate that these 5-ton titans utilized collective biothermal incubation, covering their nests with rotting vegetation and soil to let natural decomposition heat hatch the next generation, while the adults patrolled the perimeter of the nesting colony like an unyielding wall of claws, protecting the vulnerable hatchlings from smaller, agile dromaeosaurid scavengers. This was the real Cossack Scythe, an organism that took the predatory tools of its lineage, inverted them for survival, and built a self-sustaining empire of sharpness and mass that ruled the late Cretaceous wetlands with absolute structural authority. The finality of the Therizinosaurus legacy brings us face to face with the definitive, catastrophic system shutdown that closed the golden age of the Mesozoic world. For millions of years, this 5-ton, 10-meter-long titan operated as the absolute structural paradox of the Mongolian wetlands, a creature so perfectly engineered that it systematically bypassed the traditional boundaries between predator and herbivore. It did not hold its territory through the bone-crushing jaw mechanics of its tyrannosaurid rivals or the heavy ballistic shields of the ceratopsids. Therizinosaurus cheloniformis was a monument to raw mechanical reconfiguration, an organism that took the predatory toolkit of a bipedal theropod and inverted it to construct the ultimate long-reach, high-canopy harvesting machine. By turning its 1-meter fingers into a defensive zone of absolute containment and its massive abdominal cavity into a biothermal fermentation plant, the Cossack Scythe established an unyielding monopoly over the energy webs of the Namek Formation. But the unyielding laws of macroevolution dictate that the more complex and customized an organism's interface becomes with a specific environmental matrix, the more vulnerable it is to the systemic errors of planetary change. As the late Cretaceous period reached its violent terminal update 66 million years ago, the global biosphere experienced a complete architectural reset. The impact of the Chicxulub asteroid triggered an immediate, multi-year impact winter that blotted out the sun and caused a rapid, catastrophic collapse of the high canopy conifer and ginkgo forests that had sustained the species for generations. For an animal that functioned as a high-volume processing engine, requiring hundreds of kilograms of high-quality, high-nutrient vegetation every single day to fuel its immense 5-ton muscular matrix, this environmental blackout was a terminal command line. The self-sharpening beta-keratin sleeves of its claws were elite tools for dragging down branches, but they were entirely useless when the forests turned to barren, ash-covered deserts. The broad, four-toed feet built to stabilize its weight on wet river mud became a locomotive liability on shifting, arid sands. The massive nesting colonies that had filled the Gobi Basin fell completely silent, their biothermal mud mounds buried under layers of global debris and toxic rain. Therizinosaurus did not fade away because it lost a battle against a superior rival. It was systematically erased because the planet deleted the very forest canopy it was built to harvest, proving that when the cosmic code changes, even the sharpest blades cannot cut a path to survival. If this uncompromising, forensic, and deeply detailed unmasking of the ancient world's heaviest design anomalies and mechanical thresholds has fundamentally rewritten your understanding of the Dinosaurian dynasty, ensure you are subscribed to the channel and have liked this video. Your continuous support is the exact foundation upon which we resurrect these lost empires with total scientific precision. In the 66 million years that have followed this global reset, nature has never again attempted to replicate the exact geometry of the Therizinosauride frame. The giant mammals that would inherit the empty continents would experiment with the long-reach herbivore blueprint, producing the giant ground sloths of South America and the chalicotheres of Eurasia. But they would construct these platforms using heavily modified quadrupedal mammalian skeletons, never again utilizing the bird-like bipedal theropod source code. Therizinosaurus remains the absolute, unrepeated boundary of what evolution can achieve when it reallocates the weapons of war into tools of survival. Today, when we uncover a massive, flattened claw core or a textured eggshell in the white cliffs of the Mongolian desert, we are not looking at a primitive evolutionary dead end or a bizarre cinematic monster. We are looking at the true sovereign of the Cretaceous high canopy. We are looking at a magnificent, 5-ton feathered phantom that took a world of violence and forced it to run on a clock defined by the sweep of its blades and the unyielding stability of its frame. The era of the Cossack Scythe has drawn to a definitive close, its water-choked kingdom buried under modern deserts and stone. But the archives of the Valley of Titans ensure that the memory of its structural authority remains forever etched into history until the very last grain of sand.